Now, to get a perspective from a Premier League football club on this, we're absolutely delighted and very thankful to be joined by Brighton Chief Executive Paul Barber. Paul, a very, very good morning to you.
Morning,
Thank
Paul.
you
Morning,
very
Paul.
much for joining us.
Morning, Ali. Morning, guys.
Great for you to come on. First of all, from our point of view, this is great news to keep us going over the festive period. How did the meeting go in your eyes, mate?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a really difficult time, but we debated the best thing for player welfare, and it's a difficult balancing act because obviously at the moment there are lots of COVID cases across the whole of the Premier League, but at the same time we've got fixture congestion already building up. I think we've had 13 games postponed already, and the danger of postponing games when we don't actually need to is, of course, that fixture congestion then goes off into the future of the season, which could actually be even worse. So in terms of player welfare, balancing, what's right at this moment with what could be right or wrong in the future was one of the difficult parts of the debate that we had. But I think we've arrived at the right thing, which is to carry on playing while we can, make sure that we look after our players and our staff as best we can, and obviously try and minimise the disruption to supporters as well.
Morning, Paul. Was there a real fear potentially that the season could carry on, but maybe behind closed doors? Like it's happened in Wales, obviously, Cardiff, Swansea. Was there a real fear going into that meeting that could be the case?
Yeah, I think everyone's sort of slightly fearful of that, Darren, because obviously cases are rising. We've seen what's happened in Wales, but I think the difference between this situation and what we were facing last time around when we were behind closed doors is obviously vaccinations now have really, taken hold. Lots of people have been vaccinated. People are much more aware of the virus. They're careful when they're travelling to and from the games. They're careful when they're at the stadiums. It's difficult to enforce mask wearing in the Stadium Bowl, but we're encouraging it. And hopefully people will be respectful of each other and keep each other safe so that we can keep the stadiums full. I think that's really important. Lots of livelihoods depend on football matches going ahead with fans in the stadium. And obviously that's what the players want as well. We all want football matches played in front of lots of people, and hopefully we can continue doing that.
Oh, sorry, Ali. I just want to quickly ask Paul about the the games being off at the moment. Certain games have been off. Some obviously outbreaks in certain clubs, and other clubs who've had a little bit of an outbreak have to play during and maybe losing key players. What is the fair route to get a game called off or not called off? Did you mention that in the meeting?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ray. We were one of the clubs that requested a postponement against Wolves and didn't get it. It's a difficult job for the Premier League. I mean, we were disappointed with the decision because not only did we have, a number of COVID cases, we had some illnesses, we had some injuries. And again, I think the problem is if you push too far on a squad of 14 available players, you end up with potential fatigue injuries as well, because the manager can't rotate as often as he might during the busy festive period. You're relying on young players coming on who perhaps haven't played at that level and are not used to the intensity of the Premier League. And then what you then do is you create an even bigger problem because you get more injuries that reduces your squad even further. So, but having said all of that, the Premier League have got a difficult balancing act. They've got to try and keep the league running. They've got to try and keep fixtures moving. We want to try and make sure that fans aren't let down at the late stages, which obviously has happened on one or two occasions so far. But again, it's about the balance between player welfare, making sure that we keep the league moving, make sure that we're fair to fans, make sure that we support our broadcast partners. All of those things come into the mix. And we must rely on the Premier League to get these decisions right.
Paul, there was an interesting one in the back of today's Times where the stats where there's 16% of the players not been jabbed at all in the Premier League. 7% of the players have been double jabbed, and effectively 84% have received at least one dose of the vaccine. But looking on the negative side, it's 16% have declined to be vaccinated. Now, the one thing people are entitled to is a freedom of choice and a freedom to make their own decisions. I get that. We all get that. And that's an absolute priority. However, you look at whether I think it's Spain or in the low 90s, I think Germany in the same. There's definitely been a bigger increase in people players taking the jab over there. What do you think we can do? Is it an educational thing, or do you think we're going to struggle because people effectively have made their mind on it? Some of them want to take it, some of them don't.
Yeah, I think it's a constant process, Ali, of education and encouragement. I mean, we're not in a position to force anyone, players, coaches, staff, to take their vaccinations. We can encourage them, we can educate them, we can show them the potential dangers of not doing it. I mean, I think if you look at the national averages for the young men in the age group of Premier League players, we are above the average in terms of the numbers of players that have been vaccinated. There are some that haven't, clearly. In our club, we've got the vast majority that are vaccinated, which is good, but we've still got some that haven't. So we're encouraging and educating. But it is a personal choice. And as employers, we're not in a position to force people to take the vaccine. Obviously, we'll do our best to make sure that they do, but we can't actually force them to do it.
Paul, do you think we could see ourselves then maybe a little not even maybe that far down the line, where some things like transfers will maybe depend on if players are vaccinated? Do you think we'll ever see a stage where that comes into it?
I'm sure, Darren, the question will be asked when it comes to the January transfer window, because obviously what you don't want is a situation where a player is excessively isolated because they haven't been vaccinated, and every time they come into close contact with someone that has the virus, they then got to go into 10-day isolation period. So that's clearly going to be a factor for some clubs. You can't afford to keep losing players, on that basis. But again, at the same time, as employers, we're in a very difficult position because we can only educate and encourage. We can't force. And, we would hope that the players themselves would see the rising infection numbers, see the number of people getting ill, see some of the most extreme cases where people have become very, very ill and obviously lost their lives, and see that as a warning that the vaccination is actually better for them than not. But again, that's individual choice, and we have to respect that.
Paul, just looking at the fixtures, I think I'm correct in saying you at home to Brentford Boxing Day. There's something special about the fixtures over the festive period. You'll be looking forward to these games.
Oh, I personally love it. I always love the Christmas period. Just love all the games. I feel a little bit, obviously, for the players playing every sort of 2 or 3 days, and a lot of effort going into that. But I think for the fans, typically, the festive period is exciting. There's usually some great football. There's often a lot of goals, and we're really looking forward to it.
Great stuff, Paul. Well, listen, thanks very much for joining us. Really appreciate you joining us over the year. Wishing you and your family, and indeed everybody at the club, a very, very Merry Christmas and all the best for the new year.
Cheers, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Cheers, guys. Same to you. Thank you.
Talk Sport Breakfast with Laura Woods. Monday to Wednesday mornings 6 till 10. On AM, on DAB, via the Talk Sport app and on your smart speaker. Talk Sport.